Have you ever wondered what unfolds when two sisters both lose their hearts to the same man, and their father engineers one of the Bible's most astonishing acts of trickery? This evening, we're exploring the full narrative of Rachel and Leah, a chronicle of envy, cunning tactics, and frantic rivalry that would shatter a household and forge the future of an entire people. You may have encountered pieces of this account previously, but I assure you, you've never experienced it presented quite this way. With every raw feeling laid bare, the harsh conflicts exposed, and the unexpected turns that establish this as among the most intense romantic entanglements ever documented. Before we begin, for those just joining this channel, think about tapping that like button and subscribing if you haven't done so yet. Additionally, share with us your location and your current time. We would really enjoy hearing from you. So, with no more delays, shall we dive in? The prophetic foundation. Teardrops strike the earth near a water source in Haran. Jacob openly sheds tears, his frame trembling with feelings he simply cannot hold back. This instant will reverberate across the ages. The woman standing before him possesses a radiance that appears luminous under the sun's afternoon rays. This Rachel is her name, and she is destined to become simultaneously his truest love and the wellspring of his most profound anguish. Yet, this account extends far beyond simple romance. It develops as a chronicle of siblings trapped in wordless conflict, both struggling for one man's devotion. Their contest will give birth to a people. Their competition will mold the future of 12 family lines. Their offspring will inherit both divine favor and heavy responsibility across generations still to come. Jacob's weeping beside this water source represents far more than immediate attraction. His tears mark the start of household turmoil that reflects the designs already threaded throughout his family heritage. Playing favorites flows like a waterway through his lineage. Abraham, his grandfather, preferred Isaac above Ishmael. Isaac, his father, selected Esau rather than him. Now Jacob prepares to continue this pattern, unaware of what lies ahead. The water source where Rachel tends her father's animals rests within Mesopotamian lands, distant from Jacob's birthplace. He has journeyed here, fleeing his brother's fury, bringing solely the garments he wears and a sacred commitment revealed through nighttime visions. He searches for safety within Laban's home, his mother's brother. What he discovers instead is affection that will demand 14 years of toil and an entire existence of sorrow. Rachel appears during this initial encounter as self-assured and skilled. She shepherds livestock with the expertise of someone raised into this occupation. Laban, her father, controls extensive herds, and she oversees them with an authority that reflects trust built through demonstrated ability. She carries herself with intention. Unaware, her arrival has frozen time for the foreigner, observing from the water source's edge. Standing behind her, unnoticed during this instance, is her elder sibling, Leah. The historical record will recall Leah as the spouse nobody desired, the substitute bride, the woman whose eyes lacked strength and who produced children hoping to win affection that remained forever out of reach. Yet at this water source, she stays unseen, existing beneath her younger sister's prominence, just as she has throughout their entire youth. Her narrative awaits its revelation through darkness and deceptive schemes. Jacob descends from a household where sacred meetings determine futures. His grandfather conversed with heavenly messengers. His father obtained the covenant of continuation. Jacob personally will grapple with the holy and come forth changed, although that change remains in his future. The women he stands ready to encounter will maintain their own connection with the divine, although manifested through bearing children instead of nocturnal struggles. The location itself suggests divine arrangement. Water sources throughout the ancient world function as gathering points where fates cross paths. Abraham's aide discovered Rebekah, Jacob's mother, next to a well. Now Jacob locates Rachel through identical circumstances. This repetition implies intentionality, exceeding mere chance, as though the Almighty guides his chosen ones together at these sources, providing life-sustaining liquid. Laban's estate embodies success within Haran. His livestock count reaches into the thousands. His workers function with efficiency, and his daughters conduct themselves with the assurance of women from a thriving household. Still, concealed under this outward achievement, dwell the identical deceptions plaguing Jacob's own ancestry. Uncle and nephew will demonstrate themselves evenly matched regarding trickery, though Jacob begins this association as the naive target instead of the one perpetrating schemes. The ancient territories of Mesopotamia extend broad and fertile surrounding them. This region nurtures civilization's very foundation, fostering the earliest settlements and kingdoms destined to ascend and collapse throughout the centuries. Waterways run plentifully throughout this area, supplying the irrigation that enables farming and the accumulation of prosperity. Laban has selected his position wisely, establishing himself where livestock flourish and those tending them achieve success. Rachel's appearance immediately draws notice, yet her capability sustains that attention. She handles animals with proficiency, suggesting extensive practice. Her father entrusts her with precious livestock, demonstrating both her competence and his trust in her decisions. She has mastered navigating a reality where women must establish their value through deeds instead of assumptions. Haran's traditions will shortly trap Jacob in manners he cannot anticipate. Marriage customs within this place vary from those of his homeland. The firstborn daughter weds ahead of the younger one, without regard to individual choice or emotional bonds. This convention will transform into the instrument Laban employs to redesign Jacob's destiny, converting affection into service and aspirations into decades of obligation. Divine intention weaves throughout this meeting, although its complete significance stays concealed from those involved. Rachel will battle against childlessness for years prior to producing the son who claims Jacob's highest favor. Leah will deliver 6 sons plus 1 daughter, establishing the basis for the majority of the 12 family lines. Their rivalry will propel the growth of Jacob's household in manners, fulfilling the divine blueprint while generating severe individual pain. Jacob's tears beside the water source hold prophetic significance. These droplets of happiness will expand into tears, expressing frustration, disillusionment, and mourning across the approaching decades. He weeps presently because affection has discovered him without warning. Tears will return when trickery substitutes his bride during his wedding evening. He will weep seeing Rachel childless, while Leah produces infant after infant. His most anguished weeping will arrive when Rachel perishes during childbirth along a desolate roadway. The sun starts descending across Haran as this opening meeting concludes. Rachel must journey homeward with her animals, bearing word of the foreigner who assisted her watering the herds. Jacob accompanies her, his heart already pledged to a woman encountered mere hours previously. Neither comprehends they have just initiated circumstances that will shape their existences and echo throughout historical memory. The water source beside which they gathered will recede into recollection, yet its importance will persist. Here commenced the chronicle of 2 siblings whose rivalry forged a people. Jacob's escape from Esau. The benediction rests burdensome across Jacob's frame as he travels southward from his father's dwelling. Trailing behind sits a lifetime occupying second position, observing his twin sibling, Esau, claim their father's preference while he stayed the disregarded younger child. Also behind rests the boldest deception of his existence, a plot that converted him from ignored brother to inheritor of sacred commitment within one single afternoon. The strategy originated with his mother, Rebekah. She devised it frantically after overhearing Isaac making preparations to bestow blessing upon Esau prior to death. The prophecy she obtained throughout her challenging pregnancy had assured that the elder would submit to the younger. Yet numerous decades had elapsed without evidence of that assurance materializing. Esau continued as Isaac's preferred hunter, the powerful son delivering fresh meat and obtaining his father's fondness. Jacob remained near the living quarters, reserved and disregarded, talented in household activities, earning minimal recognition from his warrior father. Rebekah took action upon realizing Isaac planned, granting the firstborn inheritance blessing toward Esau. She summoned Jacob hastily and presented her approach. They would create Isaac's preferred dish, while Esau pursued game throughout the countryside. Jacob would don Esau's garments and wrap his hairless skin using goat hide, mimicking his brother's coarse texture. Within Isaac's blindness and advanced years, the trickery could succeed. Jacob paused at first, understanding the ramifications of discovery. Should Isaac uncover the scheme, he would obtain a curse replacing blessing. Yet Rebekah urged him onward, committing to accept whatever curse descended upon him. Her insistence persuaded him this opportunity would never return. Esau would arrive shortly from hunting, and the chance would disappear permanently. The trickery proceeded methodically. Jacob slaughtered young goats and created the flavorful stew Isaac cherished. He wore Esau's clothing, still bearing the wilderness scent his brother carried instinctively. The goat hide wrapped his extremities and throat, generating the coarse texture Isaac anticipated from his firstborn child. Rebekah instructed him regarding Esau's speaking patterns, although Jacob's vocal quality remained his primary weakness, maintaining the pretense. Isaac grew suspicious when Jacob approached the dwelling. The vocal sound seemed incorrect, and the hunt's swiftness appeared uncommon. Esau generally invested hours pursuing prey. Yet Jacob claimed achieving success rapidly through divine favor. Isaac summoned him nearer, running aged hands across the artificial covering wrapped around Jacob's limbs and throat. The texture persuaded him where the vocal quality had not. The blessing poured forward, carrying force, surprising them equally. Isaac proclaimed dew from the heavens and earth's richness, regarding prosperity through grain plus wine. He announced that peoples would bow toward Jacob and that his siblings would submit to him. Crucially, he declared the continuation of the sacred agreement, the commitment that had transferred from Abraham toward Isaac and presently toward Jacob. These declarations bore significance, transcending their surface interpretation, confirming spiritual inheritance impossible to withdraw. Esau arrived from hunting, discovering his inheritance stolen for the second occurrence. Years previously, Jacob had acquired the birthright, offering a bowl of stew, exchanging Esau's weariness for his hereditary entitlements. Presently, Jacob had claimed the blessing proper, seizing not merely standing, but additionally the spiritual heritage their household had maintained across generations. Esau's fury rattled the dwelling walls as he grasped the complete magnitude of his forfeiture. Isaac shook upon understanding how thoroughly he had suffered deception. Still, he possessed no ability retracting the blessing after pronunciation. The declarations had been spoken through faith and confirmed by divine power. They belonged to Jacob presently, independent of acquisition methods. Isaac verified the blessing's unchangeable nature, even as Esau wept and begged for some measure of favor. Esau obtained a blessing personally, yet it transmitted conflict instead of commitment. Isaac foretold that Esau would exist by the blade and submit to his brother, although he would ultimately escape from that submission. The blessing recognized Esau's power while verifying his secondary standing. It presented hope regarding future autonomy, but supplied no present solace for his forfeiture. The consequences erupted through violent threats. Esau announced his plan, murdering Jacob following their father's passing, calculating that household duty prohibited instant response, yet not eventual retribution. His fury blazed with betrayal's force, fueled not solely by the stolen blessing, but by years witnessing his calmer brother obtain their mother's transparent preference. The dwelling could no longer accommodate both siblings securely. Rebekah discovered Esau's warnings through household attendants, who detected his harsh declarations. She acted swiftly, protecting her preferred child, approaching Isaac carrying a petition, appearing standard, yet fulfilling her underlying objective. She expressed complaints regarding the regional women Esau had wed, voicing worry that Jacob could select similarly should he stay within Canaan. Preferable that he journeyed toward Mesopotamia, locating a spouse among their kin within Haran. Isaac consented, dispatching Jacob away, although he grasped the authentic justification for the expedition. He granted Jacob supplementary blessing prior to leaving, validating the covenant commitments and authorizing him to expand into a mighty people. The blessing recognized Jacob as the selected successor, despite the deceptive techniques through which he had secured that standing. Divine intention operated through human plotting, employing even trickery, accomplishing its purpose. Jacob left carrying scarcely more than journey supplies and his father's walking stick. Riches would not travel with him into banishment. Rather, he transported solely the commitment of divine approval and the anticipation of ultimate homecoming. The expedition northward would consume weeks, traversing lands, holding both opportunity and peril. Thieves inhabited the commercial pathways, and untamed creatures presented continual dangers toward isolated wanderers. The deception design marking this blessing would track Jacob throughout his travels. He had mastered achieving his objectives through shrewdness instead of might, and that methodology would assist him regarding his interactions with Laban. Still, he would additionally learn that others could equal his cunning, reversing his personal tactics against him through manners he had never foreseen. The trickster would personally suffer trickery, compensating for his cleverness through decades of service and heartbreak. Sacred meetings awaited him traveling toward Haran. The God of his ancestors would manifest to him through sleeping visions and revelations, validating the covenant commitments. Notwithstanding his imperfect nature, Jacob would contend with heavenly beings and surface changed. Although that change would arrive progressively through years of challenge instead of instant modification. The expedition, commencing through deception, would conclude in blessing, yet the pathway between would demonstrate lengthier and more challenging than he could conceive. Reaching Haran, encountering Rachel. The sun ascends toward its peak as Jacob nears Haran's boundaries. Weeks of continuous walking have deteriorated his footwear and transformed his complexion to leather's shade. His walking stick, passed down from his father, Isaac, has evolved into both assistance for travel and perpetual companion throughout the dusty distances. The sacred vision at Bethel maintains his inner strength, yet his physical form throbs with exhaustion from extended travel across unknown lands. A water source materializes ahead, formed from regional stone and encircled by the movement characterizing meeting locations throughout this territory. 3 livestock groups rest close by, their caretakers waiting within shade, while the heaviest stones stay situated across the well's opening. Local tradition demands combined effort, moving these substantial obstacles, guaranteeing that water availability stays collective instead of private. Jacob identifies this custom from his grandfather Abraham's accounts regarding Mesopotamian practices. The caretakers acknowledge him, displaying the guarded cordiality extended toward unfamiliar people. They present themselves as individuals from Haran, verifying that Jacob has arrived at his target following weeks of movement. Upon mentioning Laban's identity, their expressions illuminate with awareness. They recognize him thoroughly as a successful livestock proprietor whose herds rank among the territory's most extensive. His standing for astute commercial transactions has circulated throughout the regional population. We recognize Laban thoroughly. They answer Jacob's question. Look, Rachel, his daughter, approaches with the animals. They gesture toward a shape nearing from eastward, guiding a considerable herd throughout the grasslands. Even from afar, her assured movement identifies her as someone familiar with power and accountability. Rachel moves nearer, and Jacob senses his breathing hesitate within his chest. Radiance emanates from her, resembling warmth from flames. Her dark locks flow behind her throughout her stride, and her gaze conveys perception, matching her transparent proficiency with animals. She advances with determination and elegance, every movement displaying someone who has gained regard through talent instead of merely receiving it through heritage. Her livestock follow compliantly, demonstrating attentive training and patient management. The herd seems properly nourished and vital, their fleece abundant and their actions responsive. Rachel's supervision of these precious creatures reveals capacities extending past simple herding into livestock knowledge. Her father transparently entrusts her with considerable amounts of his prosperity. Jacob observes her approach, experiencing intensifying wonder. This woman embodies everything he had anticipated discovering within Haran. Radiance merges with proficiency, power equilibrates with womanly qualities, and her transparent relation to Laban's estate addresses his requirement for suitable household introduction. The divine guidance directing him toward this water source has supplied beyond his anticipations. Upon Rachel arriving at the water source, Jacob advances, carrying vitality he has not experienced since commencing his travels. The substantial stone generally demanding combined masculine effort to relocate surrenders to his power, propelled by resolve, assisting this exceptional woman. The remaining caretakers observe with astonishment as he independently reveals the water supply, exhibiting force originating from beyond mere physical capacity alone. Rachel conveys appreciation for his assistance, her vocal tone bearing warmth, equaling the gentleness within her gaze. Jacob proposes watering her livestock personally, assuming the demanding responsibility of extracting water and filling the containers. His behaviors exceed politeness into the territory of assistance, motivated by attraction, intensifying with each instant within her company. The livestock drink abundantly while Rachel and Jacob converse. She informs him regarding her household, verifying she is genuinely Laban's daughter and that her father achieved success within the livestock enterprise. Her demeanor blends assurance with accessibility, displaying someone comfortable with unfamiliar people, yet careful regarding exposing excessive personal details too rapidly. Jacob replies by presenting himself as Isaac's child and Rebekah's offspring, confirming his household relation to her estate. The disclosure converts Rachel's countenance from courteous curiosity to authentic enthusiasm. She has absorbed accounts of her aunt Rebekah throughout youth, chronicles of the woman departing Haran years previously wedding Isaac within Canaan. Jacob's presence embodies living validation of those household legends. The recognition instant overwhelms Jacob's restraint. Moisture flows across his features as he comprehends that divine direction has positioned him exactly where required. The weeping originates from comfort, appreciation, and developing affection, all blended together. He has located family throughout foreign territory, uncovered radiance surpassing imagination, and encountered the initial suggestion that his banishment could contain favors instead of solely difficulty. Rachel addresses his feeling with comprehension instead of concern. She has absorbed adequate household chronicles, recognizing this gathering's importance. Her aunt Rebekah abandoned home numerous decades previously, wedding a man never previously encountered, relying on divine direction and household planning. Presently, Rebekah's child manifests beside their water source, generating connections spanning generations and geographical separation. Jacob clarifies his circumstances thoughtfully. He portrays his expedition from Canaan and his requirement for protection within Laban's estate. He references his readiness working for his maintenance, acknowledging that welcome, even among household members, demands contribution instead of simple consumption. His years assisting managing Isaac's herds have equipped him for whatever service Laban could demand. Rachel attends with increasing curiosity to Jacob's narrative. His transparent capability with her livestock, combined with his household relation, makes him a potentially precious addition to her father's estate. Talented herders obtain regard throughout this territory, and Jacob has exhibited both power and tenderness managing her creatures. Her father will value both his household connections and his functional capacities. The dialogue discloses Rachel's personal standing within Laban's household arrangement. She communicates with power regarding her father's commercial activities, implying participation extending past conventional women's functions in household oversight. Laban seemingly values her assessment and entrusts her with substantial duties. This relationship will demonstrate significance within the connections developing inside the estate. Additional household elements surface throughout their exchange. Rachel references her elder sibling Leah, portraying her concisely, yet without the passion she maintains, discussing their father's livestock. The informal mention suggests household relationships that Jacob cannot yet comprehend, bonds that will significantly affect his destiny, yet stay concealed underneath courteous dialogue's surface. The afternoon progresses while they persist, conversing beside the water source. Rachel must journey homeward with her livestock preceding nightfall, and Jacob requires introduction to Laban's estate. Their dialogue has confirmed reciprocal attraction and household relation, yet the official plans for his residence demand discussion with her father. She requests him traveling home alongside her, commencing the subsequent stage of his absorption into Mesopotamian existence. The expedition toward Laban's dwelling passes swiftly as Rachel distributes details regarding regional traditions and her household's standing throughout the population. Jacob discovers that Laban commands appreciation throughout Haran for his commercial insight and his equitable handling of workers. His estate functions productively, his herds expand reliably, and his daughters have been cultivated, contributing significantly to household achievement. As they near Laban's residence, Jacob comprehends his existence, stands ready for dramatic transformation. The isolated exile, arriving at the water source this morning, will rest tonight as a respected household member within a thriving estate. More significantly, he will rest understanding he has located the woman he desires wedding, although the route toward that objective stays uncertain and potentially complex. The 7 years of obligation, affection, converts into toil. Laban's acknowledgement surpasses Jacob's anticipations regarding warmth and openness. The elder man embraces his nephew, displaying authentic fondness, receiving him as both household member and respected visitor. "You are genuinely my bone and my flesh," Laban announces, invoking the traditional declaration that confirms kinship, duties, and entitlements. Jacob discovers himself instantly absorbed into the estate's daily patterns, provided comfortable accommodations, and invited toward household dining. The opening month elapses rapidly as Jacob accommodates to Mesopotamian traditions and exhibits his worth to Laban's activities. His knowledge with livestock becomes transparent instantly. The herds acknowledge his management with uncommon compliance, and his perception for illness and harm demonstrates remarkably precise. Laban identifies that divine approval travels with his nephew, favoring the animals beneath Jacob's supervision with exceptional vitality and output. Rachel's company illuminates every day for Jacob. She oversees her designated herds with talent equaling his personal, generating chances for them, collaborating throughout the countryside. Their dialogues display mutual fascinations in animal management and reciprocal appreciation for each other's proficiency. Affection intensifies through daily interaction, advancing from opening attraction into developed fondness grounded on authentic compatibility. Leah stays more removed throughout these opening weeks. Her responsibilities maintain her nearer the estate, overseeing household activities while Rachel manages outdoor work. Jacob observes her consistently at dining and household assemblies, perceiving her reserved proficiency and tender demeanor. Yet his focus centers exclusively on Rachel. Leah's company registers as agreeable background instead of compelling prominence within his daily awareness. The situation pleases everyone at first. Jacob provides precious service while obtaining nourishment, protection, and household reception. Laban obtains a talented overseer whose divine approval enhances total achievement. Rachel appreciates the companionship of someone who values both her radiance and her talents. Even Leah gains from diminished urgency, locating a spouse instantly, since Jacob's arrival supplies household security and financial steadiness. Yet Laban's commercial awareness ultimately demands attention. Following Jacob working a complete month without official payment, Laban approaches him, carrying what seems generous worry. "Because you are my kin, should you accordingly assist me without compensation? Inform me, what should your payment be?" The inquiry appears thoughtful, yet it additionally converts Jacob's condition from household visitor to contracted worker. Jacob comprehends this instant will establish his destiny within Haran. He could demand financial payment and ultimately accumulate adequate returning home prosperous. He could request a segment of the herds, constructing his personal livestock through patient gathering. Rather, affection drives him toward an entirely different selection. "I will assist you 7 years for Rachel, your younger daughter," he answers, declaring his intentions explicitly. The suggestion holds both courage and intelligence. Jacob recognizes his poverty by presenting service instead of the bride payment generally anticipated for matrimony. 7 years embodies considerable payment, exhibiting serious dedication instead of casual attraction. Crucially, he identifies Rachel transparently, eliminating any uncertainty regarding which daughter he wishes wedding. Laban weighs the proposal thoughtfully, preceding his answer. 7 years of talented service from someone possessing Jacob's capacities embodies tremendous worth, potentially exceeding any financial bride payment he could obtain. Furthermore, maintaining Rachel unmarried for 7 years permits him benefiting from her persistent additions to the estate activities. The plan fulfills his concerns while seeming to fulfill Jacob's equally. "It is preferable that I grant her to you than that I should grant her to another man." Laban ultimately consents, receiving the suggestion with declarations seeming favorable, yet actually obligating him toward minimal commitment. He has not specifically committed Rachel toward Jacob, simply declared preference for household matrimony beyond external plans. The unclear wording will demonstrate importance subsequently, although Jacob interprets it as binding commitment. The 7 years commence with happiness and intention for Jacob. Every dawn positions him nearer toward matrimony with the woman he cherishes. Every responsibility becomes significant because it advances their mutual destiny. The occupation feels effortless because of his drive. Time elapses swiftly when calculated against his objective scale. Scripture documents that the years appeared solely few days to him because of the affection he maintained for her. Rachel's reaction to the plan seems favorable, although Mesopotamian traditions restrict her direct involvement in matrimony discussions. She persists working alongside Jacob throughout the countryside, their bond intensifying through mutual service and shared fascinations. Their dialogues display reciprocal organizing for wedded existence, conversations of future offspring, and aspirations of achievement together. She appears receiving the 7-year engagement as suitable arrangement for their joining. Leah's standing grows more complicated throughout this duration as the elder sibling. Tradition requires that she should wed preceding Rachel. Yet Jacob's particular petition for Rachel endangers that conventional sequence. Laban confronts urgency from population anticipations while overseeing his daughter's opposing circumstances. Leah's unmarried condition starts seeming troublesome as years elapse without appropriate suggestions from alternative men. The estate achieves remarkably throughout Jacob's 7 years of obligation. The herds expand beyond previous rates. Illnesses reduce among the creatures, and total productivity elevates considerably. Laban's prosperity grows in manners coinciding precisely with Jacob's company and oversight. The divine favor committed to Abraham's successors seems spreading toward those interacting equitably with his household. Jacob's standing circulates throughout Haran as his achievement becomes transparent. Alternative livestock proprietors observe Laban's exceptional achievement and accurately credit substantial portions toward his nephew's talents. Jacob could potentially arrange work elsewhere for superior conditions. Yet his dedication toward Rachel maintains him loyal to their commitment, notwithstanding chances for individual progression. The bond between Jacob and Rachel cultivates intimacy layers suitable to their promised condition. They organize their approaching estate together, examining everything from animal oversight to child cultivation approaches. Rachel distributes her understanding of regional traditions and population connections that will assist Jacob thoroughly as a permanent Haran inhabitant. Their compatibility reaches past physical attraction into authentic collaboration. Still, difficulties surface as the 7 years advance. Laban's commercial customs display themselves as progressively harsh, occasionally transgressing the boundary into trickery. He alters agreement conditions when situations benefit him, analyzes contracts toward his personal benefit, and demonstrates minimal worry for equity when revenue chances materialize. Jacob starts identifying designs that should trouble him regarding his approaching father-in-law's nature. Population urgency regarding Leah's unmarried condition escalates as she advances past conventional matrimony years. Murmurs imply that something must be problematic, with her remaining single so extensively, notwithstanding her transparent household talents and tender character. The circumstance generates strain within the estate as Laban attempts equilibrating tradition, population anticipations, and financial benefit. Rachel's radiance develops throughout these 7 years, yet more significantly, her nature advances through maintained bond with Jacob. She exhibits faithfulness, perception, and power, verifying Jacob's selection as intelligent beyond simple physical attraction. Their affection intensifies through examination and duration, establishing bases that should maintain them throughout approaching difficulties. As the 7th year nears its conclusion, expectation constructs throughout the estate. Jacob calculates days, experiencing intensifying enthusiasm, ultimately able, envisioning the fulfillment of his extended service and the commencement of wedded existence. Rachel creates arrangements for their wedding and approaching estate formation. Laban creates arrangements additionally, although his strategies stay concealed from everyone besides himself. The setting is established for the theatrical wedding trickery that will convert all their existences. Jacob's loyal obligation has secured him the entitlement claiming his bride. Yet, Laban's plots will convert victory into catastrophe. The 7 years elapsing like days in expectation will be succeeded by 7 additional years of service, multiplying Jacob's obligation and complicating his household bonds in manners none of them can anticipate. Leah, within the margins, the unwelcomed sibling. Leah observes her younger sibling from attention's borders, inhabiting locations where watching arrives without involvement. Her standing as firstborn daughter should ensure specific entitlements, yet Rachel's remarkable radiance overshadows conventional birth sequence benefits. Throughout their youth, visitors to Laban's dwelling perceive Rachel instantly, while Leah merges into background elements, available yet unremarkable. The scripture portrays Leah's gaze as weak, although interpreters dispute whether this signifies inadequate vision, absent brilliance, or simply unremarkable features compared to Rachel's luminous radiance. Whatever the exact interpretation, the portrayal confirms Leah as the sibling whose physical qualities fail capturing notice. Within a society where women's worth frequently relies substantially on radiance, this disadvantage molds her complete reality. Laban's preference toward Rachel manifests in numerous subtle manners throughout their development. He designates Rachel the distinguished responsibility overseeing the livestock, occupation, demanding confidence, and exhibiting his reliance on her talents. Leah obtains household responsibilities, maintaining her near home, overseeing household activities, demonstrating equivalent worth, yet drawing reduced awareness from the population. Her additions stay crucial yet unnoticed. The treatment variance reaches past work designations into feeling connection. Laban addresses Rachel displaying satisfaction and fondness, examining commercial choices and requesting her perspectives on animal concerns. His dialogues with Leah emphasize functional requirements, absent the warmth he maintains for his younger daughter. She discovers early that affection must be secured through assistance, instead of anticipated through birth sequence. Population understanding strengthens the household relationship. When visitors arrive discussing commerce with Laban, they remark positively on Rachel's features and talents. Leah obtains courteous recognition of her household talents, yet praise stays perfunctory instead of passionate. She cultivates the defensive barrier that protects sensitive individuals from perpetual evaluation against more preferred siblings. Matrimony possibilities mirror the siblings' opposing standings within the population. Young men pursuing spouses question about Rachel consistently, drawn by her radiance and her father's transparent preference for her. Leah obtains fewer questions, and those she does obtain frequently originate from men pursuing financial benefit through relation to Laban's estate, instead of from authentic attraction to her individually. Jacob's arrival converts the estate relationships dramatically, yet not benefiting Leah. His instant captivation with Rachel becomes transparent to everyone, including Leah personally. She observes him regarding her sibling with unconcealed worship, exhibiting the devoted focus she has never obtained from any man. His company emphasizes instead of reduces her standing as the disregarded daughter. Leah witnesses Jacob's pursuit of Rachel, experiencing intricate feelings, blending authentic contentment for her sibling with individual dissatisfaction. She acknowledges Rachel's happiness obtaining such devoted focus from an attractive and talented man. Concurrently, she cannot avoid questioning whether any man will ever regard her displaying comparable devotion. The difference between their romantic possibilities becomes agonizingly transparent. Throughout Jacob's 7 years of obligation, Leah's circumstance intensifies, increasingly challenging. Tradition mandates that elder daughters wed preceding younger ones, yet Jacob's particular petition for Rachel endangers that conventional sequence. Laban confronts population urgency to organize Leah's matrimony first. Still, he cannot risk forfeiting Jacob's precious service by denying his petition completely. The disagreement positions Leah in an unfeasible standing. Her years become a source of population conjecture as time elapses without matrimony plans. Within a society where women generally wed young, Leah's prolonged singleness generates inquiries regarding her appeal and her father's capacity organizing appropriate connections. Whispered dialogues imply that something must be problematic with the elder daughter of such a thriving estate. Leah cultivates internal power throughout years of secondary condition, discovering to locate contentment in her personal achievements instead of outside confirmation. Her household oversight talents surpass those of most women her years, and her reserved proficiency maintains the estate functioning efficiently. While Rachel labors throughout the countryside, she generates worth through varying talents than her sibling holds. The isolation of her standing intensifies as she observes Jacob and Rachel's bond cultivate across the years. Their transparent compatibility and increasing fondness remind her daily of her personal seclusion. She desires someone valuing her tender character and talented hands, yet potential suitors persist, requesting introductions to Rachel instead of her. Laban's predicament regarding his daughters generates strain throughout the estate. He gains tremendously from Jacob's service and cannot permit forfeiting such a precious worker. Still, population anticipations regarding matrimony sequence position urgency on him, locating Leah a spouse preceding permitting Rachel wedding. His answer, upon arriving, will please neither daughter while fulfilling his personal concerns flawlessly. Leah's spiritual existence supplies some solace throughout these challenging years. She maintains devotion toward the estate gods and involves herself loyally in household spiritual ceremonies. Her requests frequently emphasize petitions for a spouse who will appreciate her characteristics and grant her the offspring that embody women's fundamental source of protection and position in traditional society. The nearing conclusion of Jacob's 7 years of obligation generates expectation throughout the estate, yet Leah's sentiments stay intricate. Rachel's happiness in her nearing matrimony emphasizes Leah's personal, persistent singleness. The wedding arrangements stress instead of reduce the difference between the siblings' circumstances. Leah involves herself in the arrangements while understanding they honor her siblings' victory over her personal defeat. Population anticipations regarding the matrimony sequence escalate as Jacob's obligation nears fulfillment. Conventional voices demand that Leah must wed first, yet no appropriate spouse materializes, addressing the predicament. Laban's standing for harsh transactions could discourage some potential suitors, while Leah's personal advanced years diminish her appeal within the matrimony marketplace. Leah's feeling condition throughout this duration demands thoughtful oversight of opposing wishes. She authentically cherishes her sibling and desires Rachel, encountering contentment in matrimony. Concurrently, she cannot repress her personal yearning for comparable happiness and protection. The internal disagreement between sibling fondness and individual dissatisfaction generates stress displaying in her progressively reserved behavior. The setting is confirmed for Laban's deceptive answer to his predicament. He has committed Rachel toward Jacob, yet cannot disregard population urgency regarding matrimony sequence. His plan seeks to fulfill both duties while gaining the greatest advantage for himself through extra years of Jacob's work. Leah becomes the unknowing tool in her father's trickery, obtaining the husband she longs for through means that guarantee his bitterness instead of his devotion. Her role in the upcoming fraud will be more submissive than deliberate. She follows her father's commands from duty and her frantic wish for a husband, yet the results will torment her throughout the remainder of her days. The wedding evening that ought to deliver happiness will instead launch decades of rivalry with her sister over their mutual husband's love. The wedding fraud, the night of the exchange. The wedding celebration burns bright with festivity as Haran's people come together to recognize Jacob's union with Laban's daughter. 7 years of devoted work merit acknowledgement, and Laban holds nothing back in arranging the festivities. Wine pours freely, music saturates the atmosphere, and the choicest delicacies cover tables overflowing with plenty. Jacob navigates the celebration, radiating a happiness that shines from his expression, finally positioned to take the bride he has secured through years of steady toil. Mesopotamian marriage traditions establish the ideal conditions for Laban's trickery. Brides stay thickly veiled throughout the ritual, concealed from sight until the marriage becomes complete. This tradition safeguards feminine virtue while creating excitement for the groom's initial uncovered view of his bride. Nightfall offers further cover as sunset ceremonies flow into evening festivities before the pair withdraws to the marriage room. The bride remains wordless and still through the banquet, draped in multiple layers of cloth that mask her true nature entirely. Guests presume they honor Rachel's wedding. However, the person under the coverings is Leah, shaking with anxiety and frantic longing. She has consented to take part in her father's plot, motivated by her personal hunger for marriage and her faith in Laban's assurances regarding Jacob's future approval. Jacob's elation prevents him from noticing elements that would otherwise spark doubt. His treasured bride appears strangely silent, yet wedding jitters might account for this manner. The thick veiling looks customary and proper, shielding Rachel's dignity as tradition requires. His wine intake, promoted by festive salutes during the evening, additionally weakens his capacity to sense deception. Laban manages the substitution with expert precision to every element. He has coached Leah thoroughly for her part, teaching her gestures that could imply Rachel's character without demanding words. The sisters' comparable stature and frames assist in sustaining the pretense beneath disguising clothing. Above all, he guarantees that Jacob drinks sufficient wine to cloud his awareness without making him unable to complete the marriage. The festivities stretch far into the darkness, adhering to customs handed down through generations of Mesopotamian ceremonies. Visitors indulge and drink as performers offer amusement, generating a cheerful mood that hides any unease from the bride's relatives. Laban receives well wishes on his daughter's union with contentment that his plot unfolds without problems. When the moment arrives for the couple's departure, torch-carrying attendants guide them toward the marriage chamber. The space has been outfitted with quality bedding and fragrant ointments, establishing surroundings befitting Jacob's eagerly anticipated wedding evening. Wavering firelight throws, moving shadows that supply intimate atmosphere, while additionally hiding the bride's actual character beneath her covering layers. The deception achieves its peak as Jacob at last nears his extensively covered bride. Years of waiting reach their fulfillment in this instant when he may finally take Rachel as his spouse. His affection and longing, heightened by 7 years of anticipation, surpass any remaining questions about her peculiar silence or the odd tension he feels under her wrappings. Leah yields to the union with feelings that combine fear, expectation, and frantic devotion. She has imagined this closeness for years, though never picturing it would arrive through fraud. Her involvement renders her an accomplice in the deceit, yet her father has persuaded her that Jacob will come to care for her after the marriage stands completed. She holds to this expectation as she gives her purity to a man who thinks she is another person. The marriage reaches completion in obscurity, both physical and symbolic. Jacob takes the woman he assumes is Rachel, unaware that his years of reliable work have secured him an unwanted bride. The bodily joining establishes lawful marriage by regional practices, connecting him to Leah, irrespective of the trickery used in their coupling. Morning arrives with harsh disclosure as daylight enters the marriage chamber. Jacob wakes to discover Leah next to him rather than Rachel. Her expression calm in slumber, but completely incorrect in his presence. The surprise hits him like a bodily strike, taking his air and filling his thoughts with unthinkable truth. 7 years of toil have been distorted into union with the sister he never wanted. The revelation destroys more than Jacob's romantic aspirations. It demolishes his confidence in kinship ties and exposes the extent of Laban's readiness to mislead even near family for selfish profit. The uncle who greeted him kindly has twisted his devotion into unwelcome marriage, exploiting family connections to achieve trickery that legally binds Jacob to Leah, while maintaining his precious labor attached to the home. Leah wakes to witness surprise and treachery in Jacob's gaze, instead of the devotion she had wished might grow. Her wedding evening, which ought to have delivered happiness and satisfaction, concludes with the agonizing awareness that her husband feels imprisoned instead of fortunate by their joining. The marriage she has craved starts with his clear letdown in learning her character. The burden of taking part in trickery weighs profoundly on Leah as she confronts Jacob's astonished response. She has obtained the husband she wanted through approaches that guarantee his bitterness instead of his warmth. Her father's guarantees regarding Jacob's future approval appear meaningless, facing his clear anguish at discovering himself wed to her rather than Rachel. Community knowledge of the substitution circulates rapidly throughout Haran as servants relay word of the morning's revelation. Some voice surprise at Laban's boldness, while others signal understanding at his commercial shrewdness in obtaining extra years of Jacob's precious labor. The trickery turns into the topic of hushed discussions across the area. Laban's morning entrance to the marriage chamber shows deliberate timing, meant to confront Jacob with established realities instead of discussable options. He steps in with the power of father and employer, prepared to defend his behavior through references to regional practice and social pressures. His attitude indicates readiness for dispute instead of astonishment at exposure. The defense Laban presents depends on custom and community pressure instead of truthfulness regarding his reasons. It is not our practice in this land to offer the younger ahead of the elder. he states, citing traditions that he might have raised 7 years prior, yet opted to hide. The reference to custom conceals his actual wish to keep Jacob's labor for extra years while addressing Leah's marriage challenges. The recommended answer displays Laban's genuine brilliance for control. He proposes to provide Rachel to Jacob additionally, yet only following completion of the wedding period with Leah, and consent to labor 7 more years for the younger daughter. The setup catches Jacob between forsaking his genuine love and multiplying his term of service to obtain her. Jacob's choices look restricted by the situation Laban has manufactured. Regional law acknowledges his marriage to Leah as legitimate despite the trickery present. Leaving her presently would breach social standards and religious duties towards spouses. Obtaining Rachel demands accepting Laban's conditions for extra work, yet declining means abandoning her to different suitors who could emerge during his departure. The period after the trickery moves through awkward adaptation as Jacob satisfies his duties to Leah while looking forward to his marriage to Rachel. The required closeness with his unwanted spouse establishes connections that muddle his feelings regardless of his bitterness about the situation. Leah's kind character and clear dedication start to gain reluctant appreciation even as his soul stays devoted to her sister. Rachel's response to the trickery stays intricate and hurtful. She has forfeited her wedding to her sister's replacement, observing Leah obtain the marriage she had expected for 7 years. Still, she cannot hold her sister wholly responsible, understanding that Leah joined their father's plot instead of starting it alone. The treachery originates chiefly from Laban instead of from sister competition. The community observes the developing situation with interest and worry. Jacob's circumstances stir compassion from people who value his reliable work and clear attachment to Rachel. Others concentrate on the amusement aspect of witnessing a sharp man outsmarted by even sharper control. The happenings turn into elements of regional stories that will be shared for generations. Leah's circumstance during this period blends victory with sorrow. She has reached marriage to the man she wanted, yet under situations that contaminate the bond from its start. Her husband's clear inclination for her sister establishes persistent proof of her lesser position even inside her personal marriage. The success appears empty when considered against its emotional price. The lawful and spiritual consequences of the double marriage establish unusual difficulties for the home. Jacob will turn into husband to 2 sisters at once, an organization that breaks Hebrew practices while matching Mesopotamian customs. The distinctive circumstance will demand thoughtful handling to sustain family peace and community recognition. Laban's pleasure with his plot grows clear as the period advances. He has addressed numerous challenges through one trickery. Leah is wed following correct birth sequence. Rachel stays obtainable for extra discussion, and Jacob's precious labor is obtained for 7 additional years. The price in family bonds appears tolerable, measured against the financial gains reached. The foundation is currently laid for decades of involved family bonds. 2 sisters will divide 1 husband, establishing competition that reaches past romance into struggle for offspring, position, and heavenly blessing. Jacob will understand how to move between rival requests from spouses who embody both his deepest happiness and his greatest aggravation. The trickery that started this period will resonate through generations as the 12 tribes arise from this troubled yet divinely blessed joining. Jacob's fury and Rachel's devastation. The morning brightness discloses more than Leah's character beside Jacob in the marriage chamber. It reveals the total breakdown of confidence inside a family that had appeared, joined in intention and care. Jacob's anger increases gradually as the complete range of Laban's trickery turns clear, changing from beginning surprise into continuing rage that risks tearing the home to pieces. Jacob faces Laban with the justified fury of somebody whose reliable work has been answered with treachery. "What is this you have performed against me?" he insists, his tone trembling with feeling scarcely held back. Was it not for Rachel that I worked with you? Why then have you tricked me? The inquiries hold 7 years of built confidence that has been destroyed in one evening of deceit. Laban addresses Jacob's fury with steady deliberation, showing the feeling separation that enabled his trickery. He displays no embarrassment regarding his control, rather offering it as required following of regional practices that Jacob ought to have grasped from the start. His calmness facing Jacob's rage shows the extent of his preparation and his assurance in the lawful shield his plot offers. The reference to custom fulfills Laban's aims flawlessly, while presenting Jacob no path for fairness. It is not our practice in this land to offer the younger ahead of the elder. Laban clarifies with the tolerance of somebody instructing clear realities to a dim pupil. The declaration suggests that Jacob's lack of knowledge of regional practices, instead of intentional trickery, produced the confusion that brought his letdown. Jacob perceives the snare right away, yet cannot flee its lawful meanings. Mesopotamian regulation confirms his marriage to Leah, irrespective of the situations that established it. The completion created binding duties that cannot be ended by assertions of trickery or declarations of individual choice. Laban has employed lawful practices as instruments to reach his aims, while keeping technical blamelessness. The recommended answer discloses Laban's genuine drives, while seeming to present kind settlement. Jacob might obtain Rachel additionally, yet only following completion of the customary wedding period with Leah and consent to labor 7 more years for the younger daughter. The organization doubles Jacob's term of work while addressing all of Laban's challenges through seeming equity. Rachel's response to the morning's disclosures blends individual ruin with family devotion struggles. She has observed her wedding celebration continue with her sister as the concealed bride, unknowingly joining in festivities that honored her personal letdown. The finding that she has been removed from the marriage she had expected for 7 years strikes her like loss for the breathing. The sister bond between Rachel and Leah confronts unusual pressure as results of the trickery surface. Rachel cannot wholly hold Leah responsible for joining their father's plot, understanding her sister's frantic wish for marriage and her compliance to father power. Still, she cannot hold back bitterness that Leah received advantages that properly belonged to her. Leah's circumstance turns progressively unsafe as the home adapts to the disclosure. Her marriage reached through trickery misses the festivities and family backing that ought to go with such happy events. Rather, she discovers herself apologizing for behaviors that provided her the husband she had desired, while understanding that her profit arrived at her sister's loss. Jacob's inside battle grows as he considers his restricted choices. Leaving Leah would break his moral duties towards spouses, while neglecting to reclaim the 7 years he has previously invested in securing Rachel. Receiving Laban's conditions for obtaining Rachel demands 14 years of complete work, multiplying his beginning pledge. Declining the organization means abandoning Rachel forever to different suitors. The home servants watch the family emergency with blend of compassion and interest. Jacob, standing for equity and skill, has secured their appreciation over 7 years, rendering his present circumstance especially moving. They perceive Laban's sharpness while doubting the judgment of distancing such a precious family participant through trickery. Community response to the trickery differs based on separate views on commercial morals and family bonds. Some respect Laban's clever control of situations to reach greatest benefit. Others voice worry regarding the example set by tricking family participants, pondering whether such customs could extend to different commercial bonds across the area. The spiritual meanings of the circumstance establish extra difficulties for every participant. Heavenly favor has plainly gone with Jacob during his 7 years of work, yet the trickery produces doubts regarding cosmic endorsement for Laban's approaches. Some community participants ponder whether supernatural results could track such control of sacred family connections. Rachel's attractiveness, which first drew Jacob's notice, presently functions as persistent proof of what his 7 years of reliable work ought to have secured him. Her existence in the home highlights the space between hope and truth established by Laban's substitution. Every meeting with her emphasizes his forfeiture while building his resolve to obtain her as his proper bride. The financial aspects of Laban's trickery turn clear as Jacob determines the genuine price of his circumstance. 14 years of toil embody huge worth, possibly worth more than financial exchanges typically traded for brides. Laban has efficiently traded both daughters while keeping their persistent existence in his home through their divided husband. Jacob's choice arises from thoughtful consideration of unthinkable options. He cannot leave Leah without breaking moral duties that shape his nature. He cannot exist without Rachel, whose devotion has maintained him through 7 years of toil. The single route ahead demands receiving Laban's conditions, multiplying his work pledge while obtaining the spouse he first pursued. The understanding that tracks creates examples that will direct the home for years ahead. Jacob will labor 7 more years for Rachel, yet might wed her right away following completion of the wedding period with Leah. The organization establishes multiple marriage that breaks Hebrew practices while matching Mesopotamian customs. Rachel receives the organization with blend of comfort and worry. She will at last wed the man she cherishes, yet as additional spouse in a home previously involved by trickery and rival devotions. Her marriage will start beneath shadows thrown by her sister's earlier position and her father's control of both their romantic prospects. The period between the trickery's finding and Rachel's wedding moves through awkward adaptation for everybody present. Jacob satisfies his duties to Leah while looking forward to his marriage to Rachel. The sisters handle their modified bond, presently connected together as spouses to the identical man instead of rival for his notice as unmarried daughters. Laban's pleasure with his finished trickery looks total as he watches the home arranging into its fresh setup. He has reached all his aims through one masterful control. Both daughters wed, Jacob's precious labor obtained for 7 additional years, and regional practices fulfilled concerning birth sequence in marriage organizations. The foundation is laid for decades of intricate family bonds that will challenge everybody's ability for devotion, pardon, and living together. The trickery that established this circumstance will resonate through all upcoming meetings, establishing underlying currents of bitterness and rivalry that influence not simply the direct participants, yet their offspring and followers for generations ahead. A home split. 2 spouses, 1 man. The additional wedding continues with quieted ritual, missing the festive mood that characterized the initial deceptive banquet. Community participants attend from duty instead of happiness, understanding the strange situations that require Jacob's marriage to both sisters inside one period. The organization fulfills lawful demands while establishing household difficulties that everybody grasps will continue for years. Rachel at last obtains her standing as Jacob's spouse, yet the victory holds intricate feelings that blend comfort with worry. She has anticipated 7 years for this instant. Still, the marriage starts beneath shadows thrown by trickery, family treachery, and her sister's earlier position to their divided husband. The festivities she had pictured for years appears empty when considered against its genuine situations. Jacob splits his attention thoughtfully between his 2 spouses, trying to satisfy duties to Leah while showing inclination for Rachel that everybody in the home understands. His preference shows in numerous minor approaches. Extended discussions with Rachel, more caring manner during divided portions, and clear satisfaction in her presence that differs with respectful courtesy toward Leah. The housing organization mirrors the involved character of their household circumstance. Both women keep individual spaces inside Laban's big home, demanding Jacob to switch between them, following timetables that try equity while fitting his plain inclinations. The manufactured character of these organizations highlights the strange situations that established their marriage instead of permitting natural bond growth. Leah's standing turns progressively challenging as the truth of multiple marriage arranges into regular pattern. Her husband's clear inclination for her sister establishes persistent proof of her lesser position, changing every divided portion into likely shame and every private instant into measurement with her competitor. The marriage she had desired demonstrates more hurtful than her earlier isolation. Rachel appreciates benefits that reach past Jacob's preference into realistic home direction. Her years toiling next to Jacob in the pastures established divided encounters and shared appreciation that shape their marriage bond. She grasps his labor approaches and divides his concerns in approaches that Leah, concentrated on household tasks, cannot equal. Their compatibility shows in work, teamwork alongside individual warmth. The sister bond experiences basic change as they adapt to dividing a husband instead of rival for one. Youth connections strain beneath forces established by romantic competition. Though neither woman started the trickery that established their circumstance, they must handle between sister warmth and marriage rivalry while existing in near distance inside the identical home. Laban watches the household movements with pleasure mixed by worry for home peace. His plot has reached its planned financial outcomes, yet the feeling difficulties demand thoughtful direction to block total family collapse. He keeps power over the home while permitting his daughters and son by law to create their personal bond customs. Servants and pasture laborers adapt to the strange family arrangement with differing amounts of achievement. Some voice compassion for Leah's clear sadness, while others concentrate on Rachel's attractiveness and Jacob's plain inclination for her. The home workers understand how to handle between rival devotions as they attend two mistresses who divide the identical husband. Community view of the organization mirrors split judgments regarding multiple marriage and the situations that established it. Customary voices endorse Laban's following of birth sequence practices, while others doubt the judgment of requiring marriage through trickery. Jacob's standing stays solid, yet doubts regarding his household circumstance continue across the area. The financial meanings of backing two spouses turn clear as Jacob determines the prices of his broadened family duties. Garments, nourishment, and home items must be offered for both women based on their position as spouses instead of workers. The costs raise his reliance on Laban's home while lowering his capacity to gather separate riches. Spiritual celebrations demand thoughtful notice to both spouses' involvement and position inside the family arrangement. Customary rituals presume individual spouse homes, requiring changes that recognize both women's standings without establishing clear preference. The difficulties reach into community spiritual happenings where the strange family arrangement draws notice and discussion. Jacob's labor duties persist during these household adaptations, demanding him to keep the elevated achievement measures that rendered him precious to Laban first. The feeling pressure of directing two spouses influences his regular output, though his pledge to satisfying his extra 7 years of work maintains him concentrated on work duties. The initial months of the double marriage create customs that will direct their bonds for years ahead. Jacob invests assigned evenings with every spouse based on timetables that try balance, while neglecting to tackle the feeling truths of his plain inclinations. The mechanical character of these organizations highlights responsibility over warmth in his bond with Leah. Leah builds management approaches that assist her handle the hurt of being unloved, regardless of being wed. She concentrates on home direction tasks that show her worth to the family, keeping expectation that realistic gifts could at some point secure the warmth that her looks could not motivate. Her silent skill maintains the household functions moving without problems, regardless of feeling chaos. Rachel's safety in Jacob's warmth establishes assurance that shows in different features of home existence. She joins in choices regarding animal direction and pasture functions, pulling on her years of background toiling next to Jacob. Her power reaches past typical women's parts into spaces customarily held for male family participants. The mental influence on all three participants turns clear as the strange marriage organization arranges into pattern. Jacob encounters regret regarding his failure to cherish both spouses similarly, understanding Leah's worthy traits while sensing no romantic pull toward her. His awareness of fairness struggles with his feeling truths, establishing inside pressure that influences all his bonds. Discussions between the sisters disclose the pressure established by their divided husband and rival standings inside the home. They try to keep family connections while recognizing the basic rivalry that presently shapes their bond. Both women grasp that their upcoming safety relies partly on their capacity to deliver sons, joining reproductive force to romantic competition. The home arranges into customs that will continue during Jacob's staying years of work to Laban. Two spouses dividing one husband establishes pressures that influence everybody, from family participants to workers to community watchers. The trickery that started this organization persists to shape all following bonds, establishing underlying currents of bitterness and rivalry that will influence their offspring and followers for generations. Heavenly intentions labor through these human difficulties in approaches that none of the participants can predict. The strange family arrangement will yield the 12 sons who turn into the fathers of Israel's tribes, satisfying covenant guarantees through household organizations that appear meant to aggravate instead of favor those present. The hurt of human bonds functions as heavenly designs that reach well past separate happiness or family peace. Leah's sons, a mother's wish for devotion. The initial indication of heavenly blessing toward the unloved spouse shows in her body instead of her husband's feelings. Leah receives rapidly following her marriage, while Rachel stays childless regardless of Jacob's clear inclination for her. The contradiction turns clear to everybody in the home. The woman who obtains less devotion demonstrates more productive, while the treasured spouse cannot receive the offspring that would obtain her standing. Expecting brings Leah expectation that reaches past the happiness of coming motherhood into visions of securing Jacob's devotion through the present of sons. Sons embody safety, persistence, and position in approaches that exceed simple romantic warmth. If she cannot gain Jacob's soul through attractiveness or appeal, maybe she can obtain it through offering the male successors every man wants for his inheritance. The arrival of her initial son fills Leah with appreciation and planned expectation. She identifies him Reuben, stating, "Surely the Lord has witnessed my suffering. Presently, as a result, my husband will cherish me." The identification blends gratefulness for heavenly blessing with hope that Jacob's feelings will shift after he understands her worth as mother of his initial son. Reuben's entrance does deliver. Leah raised appreciation inside the home, though not the romantic devotion she had wished to motivate. Jacob recognizes his duties as father while keeping feeling separation from the child's mother. The arrival creates Leah's significance in approaches that go beyond individual bonds, yet her soul persists, desiring warmth that stays difficult. The community honors Reuben's arrival with excitement that mirrors both his position as Jacob's initial and awareness of the heavenly favor shown by Leah's productivity. Neighbors and family present well wishes that concentrate on the persistence offered by male successors, though thoughtful watchers observe Jacob's held response to turning into a father through his unloved spouse. Leah's additional expecting tracks rapidly, indicating persistent heavenly blessing toward her, regardless of her husband's feeling disregard. She understands her productivity as proof that God witnesses her pain and offers payment through offspring when human devotion disappoints. Every reception builds her confidence that heavenly intentions labor through her existence, even when human bonds let down. The arrival of her additional son increases Leah's spiritual grasp of her circumstance while keeping her expectation for Jacob's future warmth. She identifies him Simeon, clarifying, "Because the Lord has learned that I am unloved, he has as a result provided me this son additionally." The identification recognizes her hurtful truth while voicing assurance in heavenly response to human pain. Jacob's response to Simeon's arrival tracks customs created with Reuben, recognition of father duties blended with persistent feeling separation from the offspring's mother. Two sons ought to assure Leah's safety inside the home, yet they neglect to establish the romantic connection she persists pursuing. Her planned expectation starts moving from securing devotion to receiving appreciation. The third expecting comes as proof to Leah's persistent productivity and heavenly blessing, yet additionally, as confirmation that her approach for gaining Jacob's devotion through bearing offspring has not achieved success. She nears this arrival with blend of appreciation for heavenly favor and acceptance regarding her husband's continuing feeling separation. Motherhood offers satisfaction while neglecting to address her romantic isolation. Levi's arrival causes Leah to identify him with expectation that appears more frantic than assured. Presently this occasion, my husband will turn connected to me because I have delivered him 3 sons, she states, employing his identification to voice hope that 3 male successors surely must secure Jacob's feeling bond. The repetition of this expectation across numerous arrivals indicates both continuation and increasing knowledge of its probable pointlessness. The custom of Leah's identifying discloses her mental path through numerous expectings and arrivals. Every son's identification mirrors her feeling condition at the occasion of arrival, establishing a record of expectation, letdown, and slow acceptance that covers multiple years. The identifications turn into proofs to both heavenly blessing and human sorrow encountered at once. Rachel watches her sister's productivity with increasing anxiety that blends truthful happiness for Leah with individual ruin regarding her personal childlessness. Every nephew's arrival reminds her of her inability to offer Jacob with the sons he wants and merits. Her standing as preferred spouse turns progressively unsafe as Leah's realistic worth to the family increases through following arrivals. The home movements change with every one of Leah's sons as offspring demand notice, materials, and area that influence everybody's regular patterns. Jacob's duties as father increase even as his feeling inclinations stay unchanged. The increasing quantity of young tones and energetic frames changes the silent home into active family surroundings. Community view of the family circumstance changes as Leah's sons create her significance inside the home arrangement. Neighbors, who earlier felt compassion for her as the unloved spouse, start understanding her importance as mother of numerous successors. Her position gets better through motherhood, even as her romantic letdown persists. Leah's fourth expecting happens against the setting of 3 earlier disappointments to gain Jacob's devotion through bearing offspring. She nears this arrival with altered hopes, having understood that heavenly favor and human warmth function separately. Her expectation moves from modifying Jacob's soul to discovering contentment in heavenly blessing, irrespective of human bonds. The arrival of Judah represents a change in Leah's feeling path and spiritual grasp. She identifies him with basic appreciation instead of planned expectation. Presently, I will honor the Lord. The identification indicates acceptance of her circumstance and gratefulness for heavenly favors that occur separately of human endorsement. Her concentration moves from pursuing devotion to voicing gratefulness. Jacob's bond with his increasing sons grows along paths that mirror his feelings toward their mother, while recognizing his father duties. He offers for their bodily requirements and involves them in his regular happenings, yet his feeling investment stays restricted by his bitterness toward the situations that rendered him their father. The offspring sense their father's feeling separation even as they obtain sufficient attention. Leah's character changes through motherhood, from unloved spouse pursuing warmth to confirmed mother, meriting appreciation. 4 sons create her lasting significance inside the family arrangement, irrespective of Jacob's individual feelings. Her planned reasoning changes from trying to modify her husband's soul to increasing her personal safety and her offspring's benefits. The heavenly intentions working through Leah's productivity reach past quick family movements into the wider range of covenant guarantees. Her sons will turn into fathers of 4 of the 12 tribes, involving Judah, whose bloodline will yield upcoming rulers, and finally the Messiah. The unloved spouse turns into the chief container through which heavenly guarantees discover satisfaction. Rachel's persistent childlessness establishes raising pressure inside the home, as Leah's productivity shows heavenly blessing that differs sharply with the treasured spouse's reproductive disappointment. The contradiction turns hurtful for everybody present. The woman Jacob cherishes cannot offer the offspring he requires, while the woman he disregards demonstrates richly productive. The circumstance lays the foundation for frantic actions that will involve the family bonds, even additionally. Rachel's hopelessness, jealousy, and replacement. The vision of Leah caring for her 4th son while Rachel's embrace stays vacant changes sister competition into frantic pain that risks eating the treasured spouse totally. 4 nephews engage around their presence, breathing proofs that her sister has reached through motherhood the safety that attractiveness and devotion cannot assure. Rachel's childlessness turns more hurtful with every one of Leah's achieved expectings. Jealousy increases like toxin in Rachel's soul, changing her basic sister warmth into harsh bitterness that she battles to hide. She cherishes her nephews separately, yet dislikes what they embody together, confirmation that heavenly blessing rests on Leah instead of herself. The spiritual meanings trouble her as greatly as the realistic ones, indicating that God favors the unloved spouse to the treasured one. The community's shifting view of the sisters mirrors severe truth regarding women's worth in old community. Neighbors who previously admired Rachel's attractiveness and Jacob's attachment presently murmur regarding heavenly assessment on childless spouses. Leah, earlier felt compassion for as unloved, obtains appreciation through productivity, while Rachel's position reduces regardless of her husband's persistent inclination. Rachel's discussions with Jacob increase, progressively strained as her franticness for offspring overwhelms all different worries. She observes him engage with Leah's sons and understands his requirement for successors, irrespective of his romantic inclinations. Her failure to offer offspring risks her extended safety inside the marriage more than any rivalry from her sister could achieve. The old assumption that childlessness signals heavenly dissatisfaction joins spiritual pain to Rachel's feeling pain. She reviews her awareness for wrongdoings that could clarify her state, conducts spiritual practices meant to promote productivity, and requests with strength created of franticness. Nothing modifies her childless condition, raising her awareness of cosmic desertion. Conception eludes Rachel for months on end, while Leah's children mature and display characteristics that win over their father, even though his feelings for their mother remain unchanged. Rachel watches as Jacob instructs his boys in the management of livestock, and she comes to understand that being a father gives him a sense of completeness her love alone cannot provide. Her status as the preferred wife holds less weight when she's unable to offer him the blessing he treasures above all else. The tension within Rachel continues to mount until it finally bursts forth in a confrontation with Jacob, one that exposes just how desperate she's truly become. "Give me children, or I'll die." She makes this demand with dramatic force that springs from real mental anguish rather than simple theatrics. Her sense of self as a woman rests so completely on becoming a mother that ongoing barrenness seems like death in another form. Jacob's reply shows his own exasperation with what they're facing and the boundaries of his power when it comes to divine riddles. "Am I in God's position, the one who has kept from you children?" He poses this question, recognizing that conception sits outside the reach of human effort. What he says is accurate, yet it brings no solace to the emotional pain his wife is enduring. The age-old custom of surrogacy presents Rachel with a possible answer to her childless state, even if it means accepting that a different woman will carry children in her place. This practice permits barren wives to gain heirs through their female attendants, with the children legally belonging to the lady of the house instead of the woman who gives birth. Rachel chooses to use this approach, despite the emotional tangles it creates. Bilhah, who serves as Rachel's personal attendant, becomes the means by which her mistress seeks to reach motherhood indirectly. This young woman has attended to Rachel with dedication over many years, building a trust that makes her appropriate for such personal service. Her readiness to bear children for her mistress shows both devotion and an understanding of ancient traditions concerning servant duties. The setup demands careful management of feelings and what everyone expects. Jacob needs to engage intimately with Bilhah, while grasping that any offspring will be Rachel's, rather than belonging to the woman who actually bears them. Bilhah needs to give up her children to her mistress while keeping her position as a servant. Rachel needs to discover contentment in motherhood, experienced through someone else's ability to conceive. When Bilhah becomes pregnant the first time, Rachel feels hope tangled with complicated feelings about how artificial her approaching motherhood really is. She'll become a mother through legal arrangement rather than biological fact, laying claim to children she neither conceived nor carried herself. The setup meets what society expects, while leaving her deeper yearning for her own fertility unaddressed. Dan's arrival signals Rachel's entrance into motherhood by proxy through surrogacy, though the experience falls short of the biological motherhood she craves. She gives the child a name that refers to divine fairness. God has decided in my favor and has listened to my plea and granted me a son. The name shows her conviction that surrogacy is heaven's answer to her urgent prayers. How the community responds to Rachel's use of surrogacy differs based on personal views about the practice and how well people grasp her desperate circumstances. Traditional thinkers praise her ingenuity in obtaining heirs despite her inability to conceive, while others raise questions about whether such setups truly fulfill divine intentions for motherhood. The children's legal standing as Rachel's sons gains acceptance regardless of their biological parentage. Bilhah's next pregnancy happens soon after, hinting that divine blessing accompanies Rachel's surrogacy approach, even though it doesn't resolve her own barrenness. Having two sons through surrogacy gives Rachel the position of mother, while proving that the fertility problems rest with her personally, instead of pointing to any issues with Jacob's capacity to father children. Naphtali's birth leads Rachel to name this second child through surrogacy with reference to her rivalry with Leah. I have struggled mightily with my sister, and I have indeed won. The name reveals that surrogacy stands as a tactical triumph in sibling competition rather than a straightforward solution to being childless. Rachel sees motherhood as a battlefield where she can claim an edge over her more fertile sister. Jacob's bond with Dan and Naphtali takes a different shape than his attachment to Leah's boys, in part because their legal mother is the wife he cherishes, and in part because they came into being through Rachel's initiative instead of unwanted duty. His emotional connection to these surrogate sons goes beyond his feelings for Leah's biological offspring. The household grows more intricate as children through surrogacy join biological ones, informing an extended family arrangement that tests conventional understandings of parenthood and relationships between siblings. Dan and Naphtali legally belong to Rachel, but biologically come from Bilhah. They're brothers to Leah's sons through the father they share, yet rivals through the mothers who compete. Rachel's contentment with surrogacy doesn't last, as the arrangement fails to touch her fundamental desire for her own fertility. Two legal sons offer social standing and household position, yet they can't fulfill her longing to go through pregnancy and childbirth herself. The surrogacy approach works on a practical level while coming up short emotionally. Leah takes notice of Rachel's success with surrogacy and understands that their competition has moved into fresh territory. Her edge through personal fertility faces a challenge from Rachel's cleverness in securing children through alternative methods. The rivalry that started over Jacob's love now spreads into competition for children and influence within the family. Everything is in position for the sibling rivalry to intensify, as both sisters use whatever means are at hand to gain the upper hand in their continuing competition. Rachel's turn to surrogacy has shown that biological constraints don't have to dictate final results in building a family. Leah will counter with her own calculated actions, making sure the competition persists and grows stronger rather than ending with Rachel's temporary victory. The divine intentions working through these tangled family connections will eventually bring forth 12 sons who father tribes. However, those directly involved can't see past their personal battles and competitive drives. Human conflicts advance cosmic designs through methods that inflict immediate pain while reaching eternal goals that rise above individual contentment or family peace. Leah's response: more surrogacy and mandrakes. Jacob's household had transformed into a space where affection drifted like shadows against a wall. Every day delivered fresh rumors, fresh looks, fresh efforts to grasp what appeared permanently beyond reach. Leah observed her sister Rachel becoming more frantic with each moon that passed. The sight awakened something profound within her own spirit. Past simple rivalry existed a woman's grasp of what survival meant. Leah recognized that children signified protection in this world of long ago. They signified having a say at the family gathering, holding a position of respect in the household order. Beyond position, they stood for future hope. Every son would mature to defend and support. Every daughter would reinforce family connections through marriage. Rachel had offered her maidservant Bilhah to Jacob. This action had resulted in 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. The setup functioned like an intricate dance of replacement. Bilhah carried the children, yet Rachel declared them hers. The legal practices of that era allowed this. A wife could enlarge her family through her servant's fertility. Leah grasped this strategy. She had her own maidservant, a young woman called Zilpah. The choice occurred instinctively, like water seeking the lowest path. If Rachel could expand her household through surrogacy, Leah would follow suit. The rivalry had shifted into a different stage. Zilpah showed herself both fertile and cooperative. Her first boy came into the world healthy and robust. Leah gave him the name Gad, announcing that good fortune had arrived for her. The name held significance in the ancient language, implying both luck and a company of fighters. Leah pictured her expanding family as a rising force of backing. Zilpah's second son arrived not long afterward. Leah named him Asher, signifying happiness or being blessed. Through this naming, she broadcast her delight to everyone in the household. By way of Zilpah, she had secured 2 additional sons to join her own 4. The scales of power were tipping her direction, yet Rachel wouldn't concede defeat. The sisters moved around one another like wary creatures, each looking for advantage. The household thickened with tensions no one spoke aloud. Jacob navigated between 2 realities, attempting to preserve harmony, though his heart stayed firmly attached to Rachel. The pivotal moment arrived during the harvest season. Young Reuben, Leah's oldest, roamed through the fields as youngsters tend to do. His attention was caught by uncommon plants sprouting wild among the grain. Mandrakes. They were known as small fruits that developed close to the ground. Their standing preceded them through every marketplace of old. These strange plants possessed mysterious qualities. Women spoke in hushed tones about their capacity to promote fertility. The fruit looked like miniature apples with a captivating scent that appeared to hold secret favors. Traders journeyed vast distances to deal in mandrakes. Well-off wives offered generous payment for even modest amounts. Reuben collected the valuable plants and carried them to his mother. His pure-hearted offering would ignite the most striking encounter yet between the 2 sisters. Leah accepted the mandrakes with mounting enthusiasm. She grasped their worth, both useful and symbolic. Rachel discovered the find within hours. The household staff spread word quicker than wind, sweeping across the courtyard. She went directly to Leah, something that seldom occurred between them. The exchange would be recalled for generations to come. "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes," Rachel begged. Her tone held the desperation of years without bearing children from her own body. The appeal exposed how profoundly she trusted in the plant's fabled power. Leah's answer sliced through the atmosphere like a sharp edge. "Is it not sufficient that you've claimed my husband? Would you now take my son's mandrakes as well?" The statement laid bare the injury that had festered across the years. Jacob's preference for Rachel had formed a divide that no quantity of children could span. Yet Rachel possessed something Leah desired even more than mandrakes. Entry to Jacob's bed had turned into a scarce privilege for the wife. Without love, most evenings he went to Rachel's tent. Leah passed long hours in solitude, hearing the sounds of her sister's contentment floating across the camp. The deal arranged between them showed the extent of their shared desperation. Rachel proposed to exchange a night with Jacob for a share of the mandrakes. The trade exposed the marketplace nature of love in their household with multiple wives. Time spent with their husband had become a resource to be negotiated. "Very well," Rachel consented. "Jacob may sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." The agreement was finalized with business-like precision. Both sisters felt they were obtaining something valuable. That evening, Leah approached Jacob at the boundary of their camp. Her statement held no romantic gentleness, just practical announcement. "You need to come to me tonight, because I have purchased you with my son's mandrakes." The wording revealed volumes about how transactional their union had turned. Jacob went along with the arrangement. He had become familiar with the unusual bargaining between his wives. Perhaps he grasped that maintaining peace in the household called for these delicate distributions of favor and focus. The night yielded fruit beyond what anyone expected. Leah conceived her fifth son from this one encounter. She named him Issachar, a name signifying reward or payment. The selection mirrored her conviction that divine fairness had looked favorably on her bargain. She had compensated for Jacob's presence and gained a child as a result. Afterward, she delivered a sixth son, whom she named Zebulun. This name indicated dwelling or residence. With 6 sons in her account, Leah announced that surely Jacob would now establish his home with her. The expectation in her voice echoed across time, even though circumstances would turn out differently. At last, Leah brought forth a daughter named Dinah. The girl would mature to fulfill her own part in the family's intricate future. For the present, she stood for the culmination of Leah's childbearing accomplishments. 7 children had come from the unloved wife's resolve to secure her position. The mandrake incident turned legendary among those who told the family stories. It revealed how far desperation could push 2 sisters who ought to have been companions. Both Rachel and Leah felt they had gained something precious from their exchange. The passage of time would show the real price of their rivalry. Finally, Rachel delivers a son. The seasons cycled like pages in an infinite book of anticipation. Rachel bore her yearning through every shifting moon, every harvest festivity, every family assembly where children dashed between the tents. Her arms ached from being empty, while her spirit grew burdened with dreams unfulfilled. Divine timing operates according to intentions that go beyond human comprehension. The storytellers of old frequently mentioned remembering not as basic recall, but as definitive intervention. When the scriptures state that the Almighty remembered someone, it indicated a moment of stepping in, a reversal of fortune's path. The moment came without announcement or supernatural displays. Rachel's body, which had withstood pregnancy for so many years, at last welcomed new life. The conception occurred quietly, like daybreak spreading over far-off hills. She noticed the recognizable transformations that other women talk about, yet had never known herself. Word of Rachel's pregnancy traveled through Jacob's household like waves across calm water. The servants murmured among themselves. Leah absorbed the news with intricate feelings she kept carefully concealed. Jacob's delight erupted like spring following a severe winter. His cherished wife would at last give him a child. The months of pregnancy unfolded with watchful attention and tender safeguarding. Rachel became the focus of household worry. Jacob stayed close to her tent, guaranteeing her ease and protection. The other wives and concubines observed this particular care with different degrees of tolerance and jealousy. Leah grasped what this pregnancy signified for the family balance. Her own 6 sons and 1 daughter had provided her standing and safety, yet Rachel's first child would bear the burden of Jacob's most profound devotion. This baby would enter a world of love that had waited nearly 20 years to find expression through parenthood. The delivery came after typical labor. Rachel's sounds rang out across the camp as women assembled to help with the birth. The midwives performed their work with experienced hands, while Jacob walked back and forth outside, unable to settle until news arrived about his wife's state. When the infant emerged sound and complete, the camp broke into festivity. A son had been delivered to Rachel, the treasured wife. His wail proclaimed not just one more addition to Jacob's expanding tribe, but the realization of years of intense prayer and desperate longing. Rachel cradled her newborn son with tears pouring down her cheeks. The child stood for more than personal victory over barrenness. He embodied the concrete evidence that divine favor had finally shifted toward her. The extended years of observing other women nursing their babies had concluded. The naming ritual disclosed Rachel's heart. She named her son Joseph, which held several meanings in the ancient tongue. The name indicated adding or expansion, showing her expectation that this child was simply the first of many to follow. More importantly, it conveyed her belief that her disgrace had been removed. "The Almighty has removed my shame," Rachel proclaimed to the assembled women. The words bore years of suffering and social humiliation. In her society, being without children was viewed as divine displeasure or penalty. Joseph's arrival reinstated her standing among her companions. Yet the name Joseph also held Rachel's request for what lay ahead. "May the Lord give me another son," she prayed as she held the baby near. One child, regardless of how treasured, couldn't entirely satisfy the hunger that had expanded during her barren years. She desired the complete experience of being a mother. Jacob's reaction to Joseph's arrival disclosed the intensity of his favoritism. The child instantly became the focal point of his father's world. Every motion, every noise, every action captivated the proud father. Jacob recognized in this boy the ideal blend of his own ancestry and Rachel's loveliness. The other children in the household observed their father's commitment to the new infant. Leah's sons, spanning from teenage Reuben down to young Zebulun, noticed how distinctly Jacob responded to Rachel's firstborn. The origins of future strife were sown in those initial days of Joseph's existence. Joseph matured, surrounded by luxury and focus that his half-brothers had never known. Jacob arranged for the finest garments for the boy. He devoted hours instructing him about the family past, the accounts of Abraham and Isaac. Every teaching bore the significance of special inheritance. Rachel flourished in motherhood, like a plant at last, getting sufficient water. The self-assurance that had drawn Jacob at the well came back with increased power. She had demonstrated her value through this precious son. Her standing in the family order became unshakable. The birth also signaled a subtle transformation in the bond between the sisters. Leah had maintained the advantage through her fertility for many years. Her abundant children granted her useful power and social regard. Rachel's entrance into motherhood altered the equilibrium of their lengthy competition. Yet even triumph couldn't mend all injuries. Rachel stayed keenly conscious that Leah had provided Jacob 6 sons, while she had delivered only 1. The numerical truth of the circumstances continued to shape household relations. Figures still tilted toward the unloved wife. Joseph's first years developed in an environment of sheltering love and increasing expectation. Jacob perceived in this child the continuation of divine commitments made to his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac. The boy would receive not merely possessions, but the covenant bond with the Almighty. The particular treatment generated ripples throughout the extended family. Servants discovered they should approach Joseph with special regard. His half-brothers got clear messages about their father's inclinations. The household modified itself to accommodate Jacob's overpowering fondness for Rachel's son. Rachel valued every instant of her new motherhood. She had anticipated so long for these basic joys. Feeding a baby, witnessing first smiles, hearing early tries at words. Each growth marker felt like a personal win over the years of letdown. The wider family consequences of Joseph's birth would develop across decades. This child would mature to know both the advantages and weights of being the beloved son. His account would in time include dreams, treachery, bondage, and at last deliverance for the whole family. For the present, though, Rachel simply cradled her miracle baby and felt whole. The lengthy chapter of barrenness had ended. A fresh account was starting, one that would transform the fate of Jacob's household and shape the future of peoples yet to come into being. Leaving Laban, household idols, and concealed resentments. The years gathered like dust on roads of old. Jacob had worked for his father-in-law Laban for 2 complete decades, laboring first for his wives, then for flocks and herds of his own. The setup had grown intricate with time, as deals frequently do when they include family members and matters of riches. Success had favored Jacob's work beyond typical anticipations. His flocks increased through attentive breeding and what appeared like divine blessing. The sheep became plump, the goats yielded plentiful milk, and the cattle stayed sound through difficult seasons. Achievement marked every element of his animal care. Yet success generates its own difficulties, especially when riches expand unevenly between kin. Laban observed his son-in-law's mounting fortune with rising discomfort. The elderly man started to perceive how his own workers looked to Jacob for direction, how traders favored conducting business with the younger man's finer livestock. Pressures bubbled under the surface of daily exchanges. Laban modified Jacob's compensation repeatedly, constantly discovering fresh reasons to revise their deals. What started as honest business transactions slowly changed into a cautious dance of shared mistrust and conflicting priorities. Jacob detected the changing climate around his father-in-law's household. Laban's sons offered pointed remarks about foreign family members becoming wealthy from their father's goodwill. The women in the family murmured about split loyalties and unclear futures. Transformation lingered in the atmosphere like storm clouds, building on distant skylines. Divine guidance reached Jacob in the shape of dreams and internal certainty. The instruction was plain. The time had come to go back to the territory of his origin, to reclaim the birthright promised to his grandfather Abraham and his father Isaac. Canaan beckoned to him across the years of displacement. The choice to depart demanded careful preparation and sensitive discussions with his wives. Jacob came to Rachel and Leah as one, laying out his position like an advocate presenting before decision-makers. He reminded them of their father's shifting disposition and his own divine summons to journey home. Both sisters had grown tired of their father's scheming over the years. Laban regarded them more like assets than daughters, utilizing their marriages to further his own financial aims. Their dowries had been used up by family costs instead of being saved for their protection. "Doesn't he consider us foreigners?" Rachel questioned with sharp precision. "For he has sold us and has certainly consumed our dowry." The statement disclosed years of built-up bitterness against their father's conduct. Both women felt used by the man who should have defended their welfare. Leah signaled her agreement with her sister's evaluation. In spite of their extended rivalry, both grasped their common situation as daughters in a household where their father prized wealth above family devotion. Their marriages had made Laban richer while leaving them reliant on their husband's achievement. The sisters granted their approval to Jacob's scheme. They urged him to pursue divine direction and secure whatever riches he could from their father's holdings. Whatever wealth the Almighty has removed from our father rightfully belonged to us and our children, they stated with combined resolve. Getting ready for departure demanded complete secrecy. Jacob couldn't risk Laban finding out the scheme and stopping their getaway through legal tricks or physical strength. The old man had both the shrewdness and connections to make departing hard if he decided to step in. The timing needed to match with sheep shearing season, when Laban would journey to distant grazing lands for multiple days. This yearly absence formed the ideal chance for Jacob to collect his family and belongings without instant discovery. Every detail demanded careful planning. Rachel reached a decision that would afterward generate unexpected difficulties. While gathering her possessions, she secretly seized her father's household gods, small idols that stood for family inheritance and spiritual safeguarding. These teraphim bore both religious meaning and legal power in ownership conflicts. Her reasons for this theft stayed intricate. Perhaps she thought the idols rightfully belonged to her as Laban's daughter. Maybe she desired protection against future hardship or spiritual covering for the trek ahead. The household gods stood for real links to family heritage. The grand escape developed like a thoroughly planned migration. Jacob packed his wives, children, workers, and animals onto a caravan that extended across the terrain. Camels bore valuable possessions, while herders directed hundreds of creatures toward the far-off horizon. They crossed the Euphrates River and headed toward the mountainous country that indicated the border between Laban's land and the ancient territory of promise. Each step took them farther from 20 years of tangled family bonds and nearer to an uncertain but promising future. 3 days went by before Laban learned of their leaving. Workers delivered word that Jacob's whole household had disappeared during the night, bringing enormous quantities of livestock and possessions. The old man's rage burned like fire, consuming dry brush. Laban right away put together a pursuit group and headed out after his son-in-law's caravan. 7 days of demanding riding brought him within view of Jacob's company as they made camp in the mountainous country. The meeting that followed would challenge family ties and divine safeguarding. Yet before Laban could respond based on his fury, divine stepping in influenced the meeting. A dream cautioned him against injuring Jacob or talking roughly about the departure. The Almighty had stretched protection over the escaping family, restricting what Laban could achieve through strength or pressure. The encounter between father-in-law and son-in-law crackled with unaddressed pressures. Laban charged Jacob with spiriting away his daughters like prisoners of conflict, of refusing him the chance to offer appropriate goodbye to his grandchildren. His statements blended real pain with deliberate influence. Jacob protected his choices with matching intensity. He recalled 20 years of dedicated work, explaining how he had shielded Laban's flocks from hunters and harsh conditions, taking personal blame for every missing creature. His work had made his father-in-law wealthy beyond proportion. "These 20 years I have been with you," Jacob announced. "Your ewes and she-goats have not lost their young, and I have not consumed the rams of your flocks. What was ripped apart by wild animals I did not present to you. I accepted the damage myself." His track record of work spoke more powerfully than charges. Yet Laban brought up a more severe accusation that risked derailing the whole discussion. Someone had taken his household gods, breaking both hospitality and religious law. The theft stood for not just absent property, but an offense to family respect and spiritual custom. Jacob answered with assured outrage, unaware of Rachel's hidden action. "With whoever you discover your gods, that person shall not survive," he announced recklessly. The statement would bear prophetic significance that neither man comprehended at the time. Laban examined through the whole camp methodically, inspecting tents and belongings with complete commitment. He looked through Jacob's items, then proceeded to the areas of the wives and workers. Each check brought him nearer to Rachel's tent and the concealed idols. Rachel's trickery during the examination showed both intelligence and urgency. She had concealed the household gods inside her camel's saddle and positioned herself on top of them. When Laban neared her tent, she declared the inability to stand due to her monthly state, a circumstance that called for respectful separation according to cultural practices. "Let my master not be upset that I cannot stand before you," Rachel stated with complete composure, "for the manner of women is upon me." The justification functioned perfectly, safeguarding both her theft and her father's pride. Laban pulled back without looking at her direct area. The unsuccessful examination left Laban annoyed and Jacob cleared. The son-in-law's furious statement following the pointless search further confirmed his blamelessness in everyone's perception. Fairness appeared to support the leaving family over their chasing kin. Disaster on the journey. Rachel's last days. The covenant ritual between Jacob and Laban had resolved their conflicts and created limits for what lay ahead. Both men raised stone monuments as witnesses to their deal, forming a lasting reminder of their peacemaking. The separation had been calm, even warm, in spite of years of collected complaints. Jacob's caravan started its trek toward the promised territory with lighter spirits. The meeting with Laban was past them, and the path ahead held promise of reunion with family and receiving ancestral lands. Expectation journeyed with them like a pleasant companion after years of doubt. Rachel traveled among the women and children, her hand frequently settling on her expanding belly. The Almighty had favored her with a second pregnancy, responding to her prayers from Joseph's arrival years before. This child stood for the finishing of her aspirations for motherhood and family heritage. The pregnancy advanced typically through the beginning months of travel. Rachel went through the recognizable troubles and satisfactions that accompanied the formation of new life. Joseph, now a young boy, displayed eager excitement about becoming an older brother. The family anticipated another celebration of arrival. Yet traveling during pregnancy held dangers that modern healthcare has mostly removed. Women of old confronted childbirth with bravery, born from need, understanding that each delivery might bring either happiness or disaster. Rachel comprehended these hazards, yet continued forward with the family's movement. The caravan's speed adjusted to her state as much as feasible. Jacob commanded regular rest periods and guaranteed her ease during the extended days of progress. The broader family gathered around Rachel's requirements, comprehending her significance to Jacob's contentment and the household's steadiness. They had journeyed far into the territory of promise when Rachel's moment came. The contractions started while the caravan was still considerable distance from Bethlehem in the area that would afterward be named Ephrath. No suitable shelter was obtainable, only the temporary covering that wandering families brought with them. The delivery showed itself hard from the start. Rachel's labor extended through hours of mounting pain and peril. The midwives functioned with trained ability, yet increasing worry as difficulties arose past their capacity to handle safely. Women of old frequently perished in childbirth due to states that modern healthcare addresses routinely. Blood loss, disease, and positioning difficulties took innumerable lives throughout history. Rachel confronted these risks without the medical understanding or tools that might have rescued her. As her power diminished, Rachel acknowledged the nearing conclusion of her earthly path. The baby was delivered alive and sound, a son as she had expected and petitioned. Yet the price of his coming would be her own existence, given with the payment of maternal offering. The midwife tried to uplift Rachel during her closing moments. "Do not fear," she stated, "for you have another son." The statement recognized both Rachel's earlier prayers for more children and her present accomplishment in delivering new life. Rachel used her leftover breath to name the child. With her final aware deed, she named him Ben-Oni, signifying son of my pain or son of my difficulty. The name showed her distress at abandoning him motherless and her sorrow at leaving the life she had struggled so intensely to construct. Jacob couldn't stand to have his son bear such a mournful name throughout existence. He altered it to Benjamin, signifying son of the right hand or son of the south. The fresh name implied power, approval, and expectation for what lay ahead, instead of the disaster that characterized his arrival. Rachel's passing destroyed Jacob's reality in ways that 20 years of union had not equipped him to manage. She had been the affection of his youth, the cause for his displacement, the drive for his years of work. Her departure formed an injury that would never completely mend. The interment occurred beside the road to Bethlehem, distant from the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham and Sarah rested, where Isaac and Rebekah lay interred. Jacob raised a monument over Rachel's resting place, identifying the location where his treasured wife would await resurrection. The spot of Rachel's interment held symbolic importance that reached far past the direct disaster. She was placed to rest in the land that would pertain to her son Benjamin, forming a maternal presence in the territory her descendants would receive. The family's grieving interval showed the extent of their damage. Rachel had been more than Jacob's preferred wife. She had been the emotional focal point of his personal contentment. Her passing left him a widower in essence, even though he still had Leah and the concubines as wives. Joseph and Benjamin turned into living remembrances to their mother's recollection. Jacob's affection for Rachel moved to her sons with a strength that would influence family relations for generations. The boys bore not only their mother's attractiveness, but also their father's overwhelming devotion. Leah confronted an intricate blend of feelings concerning her sister's passing. Years of competition and envy had formed real hostility between them. Yet Rachel's departure also delivered deep sadness for the bond they had never managed to repair and the sister she had lost permanently. The household relations transformed significantly after Rachel's passing. Leah became the leading wife by circumstance, yet Jacob never moved his emotional connection to her. He stayed committed to Rachel's recollection and her children, particularly the motherless Benjamin, who reminded him most of his departed love. The disaster indicated a shift in Jacob's spiritual path as well. The man who had struggled with divine messengers and gained the name of sanctification now wrestled with the riddle of pain and damage. Trust would need to include sorrow as well as favor. Benjamin matured, understanding his mother only through accounts and his father's weeping. The boy became valued beyond calculation to Jacob, not just as Rachel's son, yet as the living reminder of the woman who had made his existence whole. This favoritism would form its own tangles in years ahead. Rachel's passing showed the severe facts of life long ago, where women regularly gave the final price for delivering children into the world. Her offering guaranteed the persistence of the family bloodline, yet at a price that left lasting marks on those who outlived her. The sisters, sons, and the destiny of peoples. Jacob's tents extended across the terrain like a modest city, sheltering the descendants who would reshape the world of old. 12 sons had come from the intricate bonds between their father and his wives, each boy bearing the genetic legacy of both Abraham's covenant bloodline and the determined women who had battled for affection and position. Time had shown itself the final arbitrator of the sisters' competition. Rachel rested interred beside the road to Bethlehem, her resting place identified by a stone monument that would last for centuries. Leah had outlasted her sister by many years, at last assuming her position beside Jacob in the ancestral interment cave at Machpelah. The contradiction wasn't missed by those who recalled both women. Rachel, the treasured wife for whom Jacob had worked 14 years, rested alone in Benjamin's land. Leah, the unloved yet devoted mother of 6 sons, occupied eternal rest with a husband who had never genuinely valued her in life. Yet passing had a manner of balancing what existence had made unbalanced. Both sisters had added to the remarkable increase of Abraham's descendants. Their joined children totaled 12 sons and at minimum 1 daughter, forming the base for a mighty people that would shape world history. Reuben, Leah's oldest, bore the inherent rights of being firstborn, yet would afterward lose them through moral breakdown. His standing as Jacob's eldest son had appeared to assure leadership of the family, yet character defects would obstruct his legacy and move authority to younger brothers. Simeon and Levi, also sons of Leah, would gain recognition for their fierce temperaments and rapid fury. Their vengeance against the city of Shechem for their sister Dinah's violation would show both family devotion and risky absence of control. These characteristics would influence their tribal futures. Judah, Leah's fourth son, would rise as the most important of all the brothers from a historical view. His leadership traits and readiness to accept duty would raise him beyond his older siblings. Through Judah's bloodline would arise kings and at last the promised Messiah. Dan and Naphtali, Rachel's sons through her servant Bilhah, would create northern lands and gain recognition for their fighter capabilities. Dan's descendants would bring forth judges and warriors, while Naphtali's tribe would hold lovely mountain areas and supply quick messengers. Gad and Asher, Leah's sons through her servant Zilpah, would establish on opposing sides of the territory of promise. Gad's land would rest east of the Jordan River, bringing forth intense soldiers. Asher's legacy would contain wealthy coastal territories that yielded plentiful food and royal treats. Issachar and Zebulun, Leah's concluding biological sons, would stand for the equilibrium between farming power and trade enterprise. Issachar would grow linked with demanding work and seasonal knowledge, while Zebulun would manage significant trade pathways and harbor towns. Joseph, Rachel's oldest, had already started to display the unique fate that would make him second ruler of Egypt and rescuer of his whole family during years of hunger. His dreams and understanding capabilities identified him as divinely selected for remarkable work. Benjamin, Rachel's concluding offering to the family, would mature to guide a modest yet intense tribe, recognized for its fighters and calculated significance. Benjamin's land would afterwards shelter the holy city and turn into the connection between northern and southern kingdoms. Dinah, the only referenced daughter among Jacob's children, stood for the exposed standing of women in society of old. Her account would show both the defensive urges of her brothers and the intricate discussions needed for female respect and family partnerships. The 12 sons would at last move to Egypt during years of extreme hunger, where Joseph's standing would allow their endurance and increase. They would expand from a single family into tribes numbering in the hundreds of thousands over the span of multiple centuries. Each tribal cluster would create separate traits and focuses. Some would gain recognition for fighting skill, others for religious work, still others for trade and business. The variety of talents and capabilities would form a proportioned and strong national character. The lands they would receive centuries afterward would show both their personal natures and their ancestral mothers' shaping. Leah's sons would control the Central Highlands and supply both governing and religious guidance. Rachel's sons would manage significant economic areas and keep unique bonds with ruling authorities. Divine commitments to Abraham about increase and national magnificence discovered completion through these 12 men and their descendants. The stars of the sky and sand of the shore turned into fitting comparisons for the innumerable people who would follow their family line back to Jacob's household. Yet figures alone couldn't grasp the complete meaning of what came from the sisters' battle. The 12 tribes would turn into the means for keeping and passing on divine disclosure to the world of old. Through them would arrive prophets, priests, kings, and at last the rescuer of all peoples. The competition between Rachel and Leah had appeared trivial and harmful during their existences. Their persistent rivalry for Jacob's focus formed household pressure and emotional suffering for all participating. Yet divine oversight used even their envy to fulfill intentions far past their grasp. Current readers might question what would have occurred if Jacob had wed only one woman as first planned. Would the family have stayed modest and unimportant? Would the grand movement to Egypt have been required? Would the base for a selected people have been as solid? Rather, the tangled relations of polygamy and sister competition yielded precisely the quantity and range of sons required for the following stage of divine designs. Each boy delivered unique powers that would show vital for endurance and expansion in unfriendly settings. The sisters themselves had unknowingly turned into builders of national fate. Leah's determination and fertility supplied the bulk of tribal chiefs. Rachel's attractiveness and Jacob's commitment yielded the son who would rescue them all from hunger and the son whose land would shelter the temple. Their account instructs ageless teachings about how human frailties and breakdowns can advance larger intentions. Divine control functions through imperfect people and tangled circumstances to reach flawless outcomes. What appears like disorder in the instant frequently discloses detailed planning from a wider view. The resting places of both sisters stayed landmarks for centuries, reminding subsequent generations of the women whose battle and teamwork had produced their people. Rachel's tomb turned into a destination of pilgrimage and petition, while Leah's resting spot represented dedicated work at last compensated. In the conclusion, both women obtained what they had pursued most frantically during their existences. Rachel reached the motherhood that had avoided her for so many years. Leah discovered the respect and acknowledgement that had been denied during her union. Passing and time disclosed the genuine worth of their additions to the family heritage. Their sons would confront their own challenges and victories in the generations ahead. Bondage, exodus, victory, kingdom, displacement, and restoration would challenge the power of their bases. Yet the roots established by two sisters who struggled for affection would show deep enough to maintain a people through every historical test. The account of Rachel and Leah at last rises above their personal battles to show how individual existences link to eternal intentions. Their competition yielded the construction pieces of a people that would favor all the families of the earth precisely as committed to their husband's grandfather Abraham generations before their time.